take you up on that, God. Why would we settle for something less than the actual presence of the true and living God with us? The angel can only do what God tells him to do. God's the one that can make all things happen. We're trading a mansion for Motel 6 when we take anything less than God and His presence in our life. God's got something so much better for us. Thirdly, the matter of our prayers being heard. Psalm chapter 66, verse 18 says, "If I regard iniquity in my heart, the Lord will not hear me." So I ask you, if God says, this is my will for you, your salvation, your sanctification, and your service, and we say, no, thank you. What is that? That's rebellion against God. We're telling God, God, that's your will, but I'm not interested, but I still want your blessings. God says, not interested. Come back to me whenever you want to get right. He says, you can pray all you want to. You ever heard somebody feel like I was praying and my prayers were bouncing off the ceiling? That's what they're talking about. If you ever feel that way, like your prayers are not being answered, like they're not getting out of the room that you're praying in, you better check and find out, is there anything between you and God? Because God says, when you're in rebellion, when you're in sin, if you're not obedient to me, I'm not going to hear your prayers. Think about that. That rebellion to God is an act of our will. If we choose to disobey God, that is us actively choosing to disobey God. Why would we expect God to bless us if we're in active rebellion to Him? And then fourthly, we're talking about the power of God. In that qualifying statement in that verse, it says that He would show Himself strong on behalf of those whose heart is perfect toward Him. The fact that when we recognize that God's plan is best and we're willing to get on board with that if we're actively involved in that, then we can count on the power of God. But think about, in conjunction with our prayers being answered, if God takes His power away from us, what are we going to accomplish? Without God's power, we're powerless. As Christians, we have no power of our own. What have you ever accomplished in your own strength that's worthwhile? Nothing. None of us can make a claim that anything that I've ever done on my own has had any lasting consequence or eternal value. The only thing that's going to last is that which God does in us and through us with His power. And then lastly, the perfect peace of God. Think about Nebuchadnezzar in the Old Testament, ruler of the most powerful nation on the earth at that time. And he made the statement, look at this Babylon that I have built in my power, for my glory, for my majesty. And his pride swelled up. And God said, I'm going to show you what you did. And what did He do to him? He sent him out to live like a wild animal for 7 years. It says he lived out among the animals. His hair grew like feathers of a bird, like nails grew like the claw of an animal. He ate grass. He humbled Nebuchadnezzar. He came back to the point. And if you ask me, if you read the statements that Nebuchadnezzar made, I believe he was a believer when God got done with him. I believe I'll see Nebuchadnezzar in heaven one day. You read the statements that he made talking about the God of heaven, that He's able to humble. God got a hold of him and He taught him and He showed him. But if we lift ourselves up in pride, God says, I'm not going to leave you alone. You're my child. I've got too much in store for you. I've got more planned for you than you can even imagine. But will you humble yourself? And when you do, I'll give you a peace. I can, like I said, 20 years ago, if you'd have said I would have ever been up here doing this, I would have said, there's no way. I cannot get up in front of anybody and try and preach. But only because of what God has done, God gives me the ability to do it. And I know I'm nothing special. I just try and make myself available however God wants to use me. And if He wants to use and bless, great. If not, it's probably my fault there. But God will do things for us that right now, there's many times, many things that God wants His children to be involved in and doing. And what's the first thing that comes out of our mouth? I can't. Well, if God tells you to do it, He wouldn't ask you to do it if you couldn't do it. Right? We've got to come to that point where when God expects something from us, it's because He's already equipped us. He's already given us that, and He wants to give us that peace to be able to trust Him to do what He wants to do. So lastly this morning, I want us to think about this in terms of how important is the will of God in our individual lives in relationship to Calvary Baptist Church. You mean me doing God's will is impacting this church? Doing some research on this, I came across a study, and this was back in 2021, and there was a shift. For the first time in a long time, there was a shift in the number of churches that were being started in the United States versus the number of churches that were closing in the United States. And 2021 was the first year, I think, in this study where they actually recorded a net loss of 1,500 churches per year in the United States, meaning 4,500 churches closed the previous year compared to only 3,000 churches starting. If that trend continues, how long will it be before we have a true Bible-believing, gospel-preaching church to attend? What would it take for Calvary Baptist Church to be one of those 1,500 churches that closes its doors permanently? And I'm talking about churches that at one time were strong churches, running hundreds, bus ministries, Sunday school programs, kids programs, Wednesday night. You name it, they had the ministries. Doors closed. Why is that? I can tell you one word: apathy. God's people that say it's not that important. How close is Calvary Baptist Church to being one of those 1,500 churches that closes its doors forever? Ask Pastor Miles, the church that he grew up in, the church that he surrendered to the ministry in. Since we've been members here within the last 2 years, that church in Orange, Texas, closed, sold, divested, assets distributed to other churches. While those distributions were a blessing to this church, I think everybody here would say we'd much rather, and God would much rather, that church still be operating in Orange, Texas. So what impact does every one of us have on the future of Calvary Baptist Church? What's going to keep Calvary from being one of those 1,500 churches that closes? And the study that I read said that they don't expect this trend to slow down. It said the way things are looking, they expected it's only going to get worse over the next coming years. Look around, folks. Look at the people in Calvary Baptist Church. Where is this church going to be in 10 years? What's going to keep the doors of this church open? We are one generation away of people that say, you know what? I don't care what you say, Brother Doug. I don't think the will of God is all that important. I am saved and I am satisfied, and that's all I care about. Well, God help you if that's your attitude. You're going to stand in front of God and you'll give an account for why you did not care about being involved in His will, why you cared nothing about being sanctified, why you cared nothing about serving Him so that others could enjoy what you have in your salvation. Have you given any thought to that? That one day we are going to give an account for that? What are we doing to enable this church to continue in that ministry? It takes one generation that says, nope, not for me. It takes one generation that says, when somebody asks them to step up and get involved in a ministry, it takes one generation that says, I can't do that, let somebody else do it. That's all it takes. Every one of those churches that closed that had vibrant, effective ministries, how did they go from a large, strong, vibrant churches to closed doors? The people of God said, doesn't matter. It's not important. I'm saved, I'm going to heaven, that's all I care about. One day, you will. I love this church. I've been blessed in the 2 years, my wife and I, since we've been here, I've been thrilled to be part of this church. And some of you may be asking, well, Brother Doug, do you think this church is in danger of closing? Not at this moment, but I'd be a fool to say it couldn't happen here. If it happened to other churches, it can happen to Calvary Baptist Church. All it takes is one generation that says it's not that important. So when we think about the will of God, I hope you'll reevaluate and ask God, God, am I doing the things that you want me to do? Am I involved in the work the way you want me involved in the work? Or am I showing apathy about your work? Am I concerned about the fact that I'm saved and on my way to heaven, but I really don't care if anybody else goes? I'm not willing to get involved in the work. I'll let somebody else do it. What a tragedy. Have you ever stopped to think what it would be to stand at the judgment seat of Christ and to have to give an account to God? Said, do you realize that the church that you were once its doors because you and others like you weren't willing to get involved in the work? Do we really want to have to stand in front of God and give that answer? Today is the day that we can do something about it, folks. We can't look 5 years down the road and said, you know what, when my family situation gets better, when my job situation gets better, and I'm not obligated to do this and all of that, then I'll get involved. No, God says, make me your priority now, and I'll make all your other situations better. That's what we call priority, making God preeminent in our life. If we'll develop that attitude, I think God wants to do some great things at Calvary Baptist Church. I think He's placed some gifted people already here in this church right now that God says, I want to use you. Will you let me? Because there's people in this community that are looking at this church sitting up on this hill because they all know us. We go out and knock on doors and you tell people, we're the church on the hill with the blue metal roof. I know exactly where you're at. They know about Calvary Baptist Church. Do they know about the work of Calvary Baptist Church? Do they know that we preach a message that'll change their life, that'll give them hope? Are we willing to invest our time and energy and be obedient to what God's called us to do? Or are we willing to just say, yeah, just not feeling it, Brother Doug. I'll let somebody else do it. That's how 1,500 churches a year are closing their door. As the pianist comes, I know this is kind of a heavy message, but the day in which we live, we need to understand the gravity. When we talk about the will of God, and is God serious about this? Does God just blow it off when we say, I'm really not that interested? Does God just say, okay, that's no big deal. I'll just, I'll go try and find somebody else. Only problem is when God says, I'll go try and find somebody else, He's not finding anybody else that's willing to do it either. The people that are already busy doing it wind up having to do everything because there's some that say, I don't want to do anything. I'm saved. I'm satisfied. Show me in the Bible where that pleases God. What rewards are you going to have to be able to cast back at Jesus' feet? You may be saved, but are you going to be ashamed? There'll be some people standing ashamed because they have nothing to give back to Jesus. Let's stand. Altars are open. I thank you for your attention this morning. By way of announcements, remember we do have the nursing home service this afternoon at 2:30. Brother Mike and Miss Roxanne will be heading that up, but we do need all singers available. So if you can sing, if you can join and be part of the choir, we need everybody available there. Pastor and Miss Christie and them normally sing several songs while we're there, so we need some help filling in the gaps there. So if you can come, please be there at the Calvary City Convalescent Center at 2:30. Normally they're done by 3:30. Tonight we will have our prayer time at 5:30, our evening service at 6. There will be no Tuesday Bible studies. Obviously, Pastor and Miss Christie are down in Gulfport, so they will not be back till Wednesday. So Wednesday, remember we have our prayer time at 6:30, King's Kids at 6:45, and then our preaching service, which will be Brother Christian will be preaching for us on Wednesday night. So looking forward to hearing what Brother Christian has for us, so be here for that. And then I wanted to mention that the next big thing that we have coming up on our church calendar is our Beams Rally coming up on Friday night, March 21st. There are some cards that are out in the foyer out there. Grab you some, take them out, invite people, stick them places so people will be aware of that. We want to try and get as many people in the community to come as possible on there. So we've got Brother Kenny Calloway, who was with us here on Friends and Family Day several years ago. He's going to be coming, doing special music that night. We'll have Pastor Michael Payton from, I think it's Greenwood or Greenville, Mississippi, but he's been here before for a missions conference he's preached, so he's going to be here. Of course, Brother Dr. Butch Lockhart, who's been here several times already, who's the president of Beams, he'll be with us. Dr. Joe Arthur will be here with us. He is a pastor at a church in Jonesboro, Georgia. He's a known evangelist. You'll want to come hear him. And trying to promote this to churches. I know pastor is going to invite all the people in the pastors' fellowships, invite as many people to come. They will be taking up an offering that night for the Bible project for Beams this year is for the Philippines. We will be receiving our Beams offering. Normally we do that on Calvary Loves Jesus Day, but since we've had kind of a weird last few weeks over there, we were not able to take that offering up like we normally do, where pastor would take that when he goes to the Beams conference this week. They would normally have taken that with them. So what we are going to do, if you want to give between now and the Beams Rally, March 21st, mark it on your church, get one of the offering envelopes and mark it on there for the Beams offering. And that way that will be added and they will just hold all that and collect all that. So until the Beams Rally, we will be receiving that offering. So any amount that you want to give, we will take that between now and then. Do we have any other announcements that I need to make that I may have forgotten?
I think we may have some people traveling the next couple of weeks coming back.
Some people coming back from Florida. Be praying for them. Pray the Lord will light a fire under them and get them up here a little bit quicker. We miss our Floridian folks during the wintertime. All right. If not, Brother Brian Bell, would you close us in prayer, please, brother?